All right, so this lecture is actually just going to be a real short one. I only have one problem I want to walk you through, but let me just talk about what's due this week. So if you go to the week 13 tab, you look here, I have a bunch of lectures about hypothesis testing for proportions. So this is just a continuation from last week when we were talking about hypothesis testing for means. Now it's just going to be for a proportion or a population proportion. So lecture one here kind of dives into a deep analysis or kind of theory behind it. Lecture number two shows you how to use a website for the hypothesis testing. And lecture number three is the p-value approach to hypothesis testing using your graphing calculator. It's also going to be the method I show you in class today just now. And it's the method you should use on your assignment this week. So your final assignment this week, final take home or final online quiz, if you click on it, is really important. You only get one attempt at this, okay, unlike the previous assignment. So when you begin it, what it is it's two hypothesis tests, okay, where you have to write in the answers, write out the 5 steps to solve the hypothesis test, and then I will grade them and get them back to you. So I'm a little behind on the grading from last week, but I'll get those probably out to you tomorrow. But so what you'll have to do is you'll have to type in like here, just step 1, what you do, step 2, what you do, and so on, okay, for your assignment. And then when you're done, just save and submit, and I'll get back to you on this. All right, any questions on the homework assignment for the week? Okay, all right. So then let's do the one example for this week. And after you watch me do this example, you'll actually be pretty well situated to be able to do the problems on your homework, okay? All right, so here's the problem. According to 2000, so this is 20 years ago, Department of Education report, 13.1% of adults aged 25 years or older had an advanced degree. Okay, so this number right here, what I mean by advanced degree is it's higher than a bachelor's degree, so it's master's, doctorates, MDs, law degrees, MBAs, things like that. That's what constitutes an advanced degree. Okay, so that was 20 years ago. So, you know, the job market's changed since then. So a researcher wants to conduct a test to see if the proportion of individuals who have an advanced degree has increased since then. So in the year 2000, okay, it's a higher amount. Just real quick, so the key word there is increased. So what type of test does this sound like it will be? Right-tailed, left-tailed, two-tailed? Anybody got a guess? Okay. It's going to be a right-tailed, yeah. So the word increased exactly. Thank you in the chat there. Yeah, it's going to be a right-tailed test. Okay, so to conduct the test, the researcher samples 1,000 adults, so that's my sample size, all right, age 25 years or older, and finds that 150 of them, that's my X, have an advanced degree, okay? At the 0.05 level of significance, is there sufficient evidence to suggest the proportion has increased, okay, over the last 20 years? Okay, all you're going to need to be able to do this problem is the initial proportion, your sample size, the number of individuals who have the characteristic you're interested in, and the level of significance. And boom, you can solve this real quickly in your calculator. All right, so 5-step process. So when you go to submit your homework this week, you have to write out these steps. Okay, this is really important. And when you get to the final, you have to as well. Okay. All right, so the first thing, step 1, you have to set up the test. So you have to define what the parameter is, okay? Well, looking back at this, in the year 2000, do we know, so this was 20 years ago, do we know the proportion of people who had an advanced degree? All the way back in the year 2000? What does the Department of Education say it is?
13.1%.
Yeah. So what we're looking to see is if that in the year 2020, now it's higher than that. So the proportion we're going to investigate looking at is the proportion of adults in the year 2020 who have an advanced degree. Okay, that's what we're looking at right there. All right, so, and everybody correctly said it was a right-tailed test. So my null hypothesis is gonna be P is equal to something, and my alternative hypothesis is gonna be, wait a second, no way, P has to be greater than something. So what do we assume it's gonna be equal to start with? What's our base assumption here? Yeah, no, you just have to be careful here when you write this. You have to change it to a proportion. So we're gonna assume that it's equal to the 13.1% or 0.131. And what we're saying is, wait a second, no way, it's gotta be greater than that. It's gotta be, it's gone up. You know, people are more likely to get advanced degrees 20 years from 2000. All right, good news, level of significance, always be given. Okay, it's always gonna be 0.05 or 0.01 or 0.10. I'll tell you that in the problem. Okay, once you have this set up, boom, your calculator will do the rest of the work for you, okay? So you're gonna go over to here and you're gonna press the stat button. You're gonna scroll over to tests. And the option you want for this week always is number 5 here. It's 1-prop z-test, 1-prop z-test. So I'm gonna scroll down to that. I'm gonna hit enter. Okay, and at this point, your calculator, you just have to plug in the values and your calculator will solve it for you perfectly. So P sub 0 is the value you have in the null hypothesis right here. So that is our base assumption, which is 0.131. X is the number of individuals who have that advanced degree. It's 150. N was our sample size. All right, so that was the 1,000 people who had that advanced degree, or the 1,000 people we sampled, excuse me. Then you just have to scroll down here and you have to change the test to match whatever sign you have here. So it's a right-tailed test. So I'm gonna scroll over to here. I'm gonna hit enter. And then I'm just gonna scroll down to calculate and I'm gonna hit enter. All right, how many people following along got the same thing I have right up there? If you were able to do it on your calculator. Okay, great. So this gives you all the information you need right here. This Z right here, Z is equal to, that's the test statistic, 1.781. I'll just round it to 3 decimal places. Okay, this P under here, that's the P value for the test. So that's 0.0375 when I do it. All right, so now you have to figure out a conclusion here. So looking at the P value and looking at the level of significance, do we reject the null or do we fail to reject the null?
We reject the null.
Yeah. So whenever the p-value, I had this silly saying, when the p-value is low, the null must go. So when the p-value is less than the level of significance, so since the p-value, can't type today, is less than the level of significance, being that the value above there is less than the level of significance, we reject the null hypothesis. What that means is evidence supports the alternative, and it seems the proportion of adults who have an advanced degree has increased from the 2000 level. So it's gone up since the year 2000. People are more likely to go on to graduate school nowadays, is what this data is suggesting. And that right there is what you have to do on your homework this week. You just have to do 2 of them. And that's it. And I honestly think that this right here, the hardest part of these problems are this part here, step 1, correctly setting it up, and then the conclusion. Your calculator does the test statistic, the p-value for you, and the level of significance is already given. Think you guys could handle these on the assignment this week? Well, all right, good. If you go back, I highly encourage you, if you look in here to spend some time on lecture number 3 here. What I do is I just work just a bunch of different examples for you here. And they correspond pretty well to your homework assignment this week. All right, I just want to talk about the final now real quick. Wednesday or Thursday of this week, just depends on how busy the rest of my week is, I'm going to post your final exam for you. Your final exam is going to be just like the midterm. Okay, it's going to be one question from every topic we've covered. So the questions are going to be things like sampling distribution of the sample mean, sampling distribution of the sample proportion, confidence intervals for a mean, confidence intervals for a proportion, hypothesis testing for a mean, and hypothesis testing for a proportion. And just like the previous one, I'll put like 7, 8 questions on there and I'll grade your best 5 is what it'll come down to. Okay. And next week, for our next week's Zoom meeting, I'll go back and do some of the original problems like the sampling distribution from the sample mean questions, because it's been a while since we've worked on those. So that's what I have for this week. I know it was short, but before I end the call, does anybody have any questions about any of this?
Yes, I have questions. So you said if greater we fail reject, and if less we reject. So how about if equal to?
The probability that it would be equal to is so low it will never happen. But in the off chance that it does happen, you would fail to reject the null if it was equal to, because it has to be less than to reject. Does that answer your question?
Oh, repeat again. If equal to, so
if it's equal, like if your p-value had been exactly 0.05, you would fail to reject the null.
Okay. And another question.
I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay. So with the p-value, we compare p-value with level of significance, and the critical value, we compare critical value with test statistic.
That is correct. And you are more than welcome to do whichever one you prefer.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the p-value is a little bit easier because the calculator does it for you, but it's up to you. Tiffany, to answer your question in the chat, what format is the final going to be like? Just like the midterm. Okay, exactly like the midterm. There'll be like 7 questions that I'll grade your best 5. That's what it'll come down to. And you'll get 1 question from every topic we've done since the midterm. Does that answer your question, Tiffany? Yep. So what'll happen is it'll be a document. And let me just, what it'll be a document that I'm going to post here. And let me go into a different class and I'll show you. It'll look like this. Okay. And let me go into student view. This is from a different class, but it'll look exactly the same. It'll say final exam here, and then there'll be a PDF or a doc file. Okay, and you have to submit it back to me either as a PDF or a JPEG. I'm having trouble. iPhone photos are saved as like a .heic file or something, and I'm having a hard time opening those. So you'll save it as a PDF, and then all you'll do is you'll click on the assignment, and you'll browse and you'll attach whatever the file is that you want to submit, and then you'll just hit submit to me, and then I'll get it. Does that answer your question, Tiffany? Okay, great. Joyce, when will the last quiz results be posted? When I get to them. Sorry, I'm a little sluggish with everything going on, but I'll try to get to them soon. Any other questions? All right, everybody. I will end the call, and I'm going to post the recording to YouTube, and then I'll send you the link as soon as it's done.